Okay, so let's dive into something I think we all experience. Routines.
Yeah,
You have them, I have them, we all have them.
we do.
But how often do you think about how you talk about your day,
Right.
especially in English?
Yeah.
That's our focus today, using your daily routine as a springboard to unlock, I think, more fluent and engaging English conversation.
What's fascinating is how this everyday topic can reveal so much about language itself. We're going beyond just listing activities. We're looking at the nuances of phrasing cultural context and how to truly connect with someone through talking about your day.
All right. And so often we just fall back on those basic phrases without realizing the potential for deeper expression. And we've got some great sources to draw from today, including a study on how time perception affects language,
Oh, cool.
and even a blog post from a linguist who analyzes how different cultures describe their routines.
Interesting.
Ready to get started?
Absolutely. Let's unpack this.
Perfect. Now, you've probably heard the advice that talking about your routine is great for English practice. But why is that?
It boils down to, I think, universality and simplicity. Everyone, regardless of background, has a daily routine, so it provides a common ground for conversation, a shared experience to build upon. Plus, the language used to describe routines is generally straightforward, allowing you to focus on fluency and pronunciation without getting bogged down in complex grammar.
Yeah, it's like that comfortable pair of jeans.
Mhm.
Reliable, familiar. But with the right accessories can become something stylish. So how can we elevate our routine descriptions beyond the basic I wake up, I eat breakfast level?
I think instead of just listing activities, think about the why behind them. For example, instead of saying, I take the bus to work, you could say, I take the bus because it gives me time to read, or it's more environmentally friendly than driving. Adding that extra layer of explanation reveals your personality, makes the conversation more engaging.
I love that. It's about showcasing your individuality within the framework of a routine. And speaking of individuality, our sources delve into some fascinating cultural differences when it comes to describing daily life. What stood out to you?
There's a study in our stack that highlights how time perception influences language. For instance, cultures with a more fluid approach to time might use phrases like around 7 month or in the morning more frequently than cultures where punctuality is highly valued.
That's a great point. It's not just about the words themselves, it's about understanding the cultural context that shapes those words.
Yeah,
We're not just learning English, we're gaining a window into different ways of life.
exactly. And that cultural understanding can make you a more effective communicator, allowing you to tailor your language to your audience and avoid potential misunderstandings.
It's like having a secret decoder ring for conversations. Now let's move on to those specific phrases and vocabulary that will help you describe your day like a native speaker. Where should we start?
Let's break it down into those familiar chunks: morning, midday, and evening. What's interesting here is that even within these categories, there's room for nuance. For example, I get up at 7.0 has a slightly different connotation than I wake up around 7.0.
Oh, I like that. Tell me more about those subtle distinctions. What makes them different?
I get up at 7.0 implies a more precise, perhaps even regimented start to your day. It suggests a conscious decision to rise at that specific time. On the other hand, I wake up around 7.0 conveys a more relaxed approach to time, suggesting that you wake up naturally within that general time frame.
So the choice of phrasing can subtly reveal your personality and even cultural background.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Now let's dive into some practical examples for each part of the day, starting with those morning routines. What are some common phrases we might use?
Well, we could use phrases like, I hit the snooze button a few times. Relatable, right?
Well, yeah.
Or I grab a quick coffee and head out the door, which paints a picture of a busy morning.
It's amazing how those little details bring the routine to life. And I know some of our sources talked about the importance of using time expressions effectively. What should we keep in mind?
You're right, those time expressions are key. Phrases like around, about, or approximately add a naturalness to your speech, especially in casual conversation. It's more common to say, I usually have breakfast around 8.60 than I always have breakfast at 8.00 sharp.
It's that flexibility in language that makes it feel authentic.
Exactly. Now, as we move into the midday routine, things might shift a bit depending on whether you're describing a work day or a school day or something else entirely.
And this is where those verbs become really important.
Yeah,
It's the difference between saying, I attend classes versus I work on a project.
precisely. Think about the key actions that define your midday routine and choose verbs that accurately convey those actions. For example, you might say, I usually spend my afternoons catching up on emails and attending meetings.
And don't forget about those breaks. Whether it's a quick coffee run or a walk around the block, those
Wow.
moments are part of the routine too.
Absolutely. You might say, I take a short break in the afternoon to clear my head. Or I grab lunch with colleagues around 1.0.
It's all about painting a complete picture of your day. And speaking of pictures, I'm curious about how we can make our descriptions even more vivid and engaging. What are some techniques we can borrow from storytelling?
One powerful technique is using sensory details. Instead of simply saying, I eat lunch, try describing the taste, smell, or even the sound of your meal. You could say, I savor a delicious bowl of ramen, the broth steaming and the noodles perfectly al dente.
Ooh, now I'm getting hungry. That's such a great tip. It's about engaging all the senses to create a richer experience for the listener. What other storytelling techniques can we use?
Another technique is incorporating mini stories or anecdotes into your routine descriptions. For instance, instead of saying, I commute by train, you could share a funny or memorable experience you had on the train. It could be something as simple as, on my commute this morning, I saw a dog wearing a tiny backpack. It made my day.
I love that. It adds a personal touch and makes the conversation more memorable. It shows that you're not just reciting a script, you're sharing a piece of yourself. Now, as we transition to the evening routine, I'm thinking about those activities that help us unwind and recharge after a long day.
Right. And these can be some of the most enjoyable parts of the routine to describe. Think about the activities that bring you a sense of calm or fulfillment. You might say, I love to curl up with a good book before bed, or I spend my evenings catching up with friends and family.
And again, those time expressions play a role here. It's the difference between saying, I go to bed at 10 Mero, and I try to wind down around 9:00 and aim for lights out by 10:30.
Exactly, those subtle shifts in phrasing create a more nuanced and realistic portrayal of your evening routine.
It's about embracing the imperfections and the natural flow of the day. Now, I know some of our sources touched on the potential pitfalls of talking about routines. What should we be mindful of?
One thing to be aware of is the fine line between sharing enough detail to be engaging and oversharing to the point of boredom or discomfort. Not every detail of your routine needs to be shared, especially when you're just getting to know someone.
It's about finding that sweet spot where you're revealing enough to spark connection without overwhelming the listener. Any other potential pitfalls to avoid?
Another one is falling into the trap of sounding too robotic or scripted. While it's great to have a solid foundation of vocabulary and phrases, it's important to allow for spontaneity and natural variations in your speech. Don't be afraid to deviate from the script and let your personality shine through.
That's such great advice. It's a reminder that language is a living, breathing thing, and we should embrace its flexibility. Yeah, it's like we're jazz musicians, riffing on the theme of daily routine.
Exactly.
The structure, but there's also room for improvisation and personal flair.
Exactly. And just as a good jazz solo can transport you, a well-described routine can transport your listener, making them feel like they're right there with you, experiencing your day.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to touch on a point that really resonated with me from our source material. It's this idea that talking about our routines can actually be a path to greater self-awareness.
That's such a powerful concept, isn't it? By taking the time to articulate our daily activities, we're essentially holding a mirror up to our lives, examining our habits, preferences, and choices.
It's like hitting the pause button on autopilot and asking, is this really how I want to spend my time? What brings me joy? What could I do differently?
Precisely. And that self-reflection can be incredibly empowering. It can lead to positive changes, whether it's incorporating a new habit, streamlining your schedule, or simply appreciating the little rituals that bring meaning to your day.
So it's not just about improving our English, it's about using language as a tool for personal growth and self-discovery.
Absolutely. And that's one of the most rewarding aspects of language learning, in my opinion. It's not just about acquiring words and grammar. It's about expanding our understanding of ourselves
Yeah.
and the world around us.
It's a journey of both linguistic and personal transformation. And speaking of journeys, I want to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question to carry with them. We've talked about how routines can be both comforting and at times a bit limiting. So what's one small change you could make to your daily routine that would inject a bit more joy, creativity, or meaning into your life?
That's a fantastic question to ponder. It could be something as simple as taking a different route to work, or trying a new recipe for dinner, or dedicating a few minutes each day to mindfulness or meditation.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless. And the key takeaway here is that even small tweaks to our routine can have a ripple effect on our overall well-being and happiness.
Absolutely. So as you go about your day, Be mindful of the choices you make, the rituals you embrace, and the words you use to describe them. Remember, language is a powerful tool. Use it to express yourself, connect with others, and unlock the hidden depths of your own daily life.
Beautifully said. It's been an absolute pleasure diving deep into this topic with you today. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey of linguistic exploration and self discovery. Until next time, keep those routines rolling and keep those conversations flowing.